The beginning of the story presented in GTA 3 is initiated by a cutscene straight from old-school action movies. You know, a bank heist with robbers, gunshots fired at different places, including a security camera to make it harder for the police to find the perpetrators, and at the very end, a huge plot twist that almost leads to the death of 2 members of the robbery team. However, the scene we are witnessing in the game, excluding the fact that it lacks nothing in terms of action, doesn't tell us anything more either. Generally speaking, it looks like everything is going according to plan, and suddenly, out of nowhere, some crazy woman kills 2 men and runs away with the 3rd one. There are 1,000 question marks about this, but at first glance, it's hard to find any logic here. If the police successfully found the perpetrators of this robbery, it would be better to have committed only a bank robbery than a robbery and the murder of 2 people. Since the robbery went so well, was it even worth killing some of your people? The matter is even more complicated, because back in 2001, we did not yet know much about the crazy Caesar's cousin, with whom CJ had the pleasure of having some contact in 1992. That's how it is according to the chronology of events in the GTA universe, but I digress. So to sum up, the only thing we know is that Catalina suddenly decides to shoot her boyfriend, because he is supposedly not ambitious enough for her, which, of course, makes no sense. However, as it turns out, if you dig around a bit behind the scenes, you can draw some conclusions here and there. In fact, I would say that some people, in this case those who are a bit more empathetic, may even stick up for Catalina and say that she had good reasons for her actions. So let's get to the point. Why did Catalina betray Claude? What does CJ from GTA San Andreas have to do with all this? Why was it in 2001, during this particular robbery, that Catalina decided to betray the main character of GTA 3? And why did it come so easily for her? Especially considering that their relationship had already lasted 9 years. Well, after Rockstar released GTA 3 and before the release of GTA San Andreas, that is between 2001 and 2004, many of these questions could only be answered with far-fetched theories. Now, with good knowledge of the plots of both parts of GTA, we can go through a much more detailed analysis. Let's go back to 1992 to the state of San Andreas, or more precisely to the rural areas north of Los Santos. A certain young gangster, Carl Johnson, needs cash and needs it fast. He tells his sister's boyfriend, Cesar Villalpando, about it, who has also been his very good friend for some time. Cesar then indirectly introduces CJ to his cousin, Catalina, who is supposed to help solve Carl's money problems. It quickly turns out that wants to help CJ in a particular way, by robbing local businesses. What is important is that during these crime activities, the extremely annoying, malicious, arrogant, envious, ruthless, sinister, cruel, greedy, prideful, egocentric, insolent, irresponsible, self-absorbed, selfish, and, above all, stubborn Catalina falls in love with Carl and confesses her feelings to him. Yes, looking at all these epithets and the fact that they coincide with CJ's opinion about Catalina, our beloved protagonist of GTA San Andreas certainly must have been on Cloud 9. However, CJ decides to play it sensibly because he needs the money. In other words, he agrees to a relationship with this woman. However, it is visible that Carl was actually using Catalina's feelings to make her take him to subsequent places to rob. Carl didn't love Catalina one bit. You could even say with a fair degree of certainty that he didn't like her a lot. He admits to this in one of the cutscenes from the Farewell My Love mission. Yes, maybe indirectly, but well, it's not difficult to deduce. On the one hand, it's definitely not surprising. Catalina was a completely crazy, emotionally unstable, egocentric lunatic. On the other hand, using someone else's love for your gain is a very immoral act. CJ probably knew that, but he probably approached it a little differently. Something like, stealing from a thief is totally moral. Also, from CJ's point of view, it was probably seen in the sense that since Catalina is not a good person from the outside, you can inflict pain and suffering on her and everything will be just fine. Some people justify CJ by saying that he was simply afraid that if he said no to Catalina, she would tear him apart and bury him in her backyard. This is a good try, but honestly, looking at what other earning opportunities CJ had at that stage, I would rather think that the first option is more likely. Coming back to the merits, Catalina soon opened her eyes. To make Carl jealous and give some hope that CJ would fight for her like a real man, Catalina told CJ she was breaking up with him, and also announced that she had found a new guy. Looking at this whole new relationship with Catalina from the side, you could quickly see that this relationship had no real feeling in it. Thanks to the dialogue from the mission "Farewell, My Love," and even more so thanks to the irritating phone calls from Catalina to Carl, it is clear that Catalina was head over heels in love with her former partner. Claude only served her purpose to constantly try to make CJ jealous. Of course, Claude was also useful to Catalina in terms of fulfilling her criminal dreams, but more on that in a moment.
Yes, Claude! Faster, harder, deeper! Oh, Jess!
Catalina, you sick! Get help!
And you, Carl, you are jealous!
When CJ ignored Catalina and her taunts again and again, plus he never called her himself, even as a friend, the woman finally realized that CJ doesn't give a damn. In fact, he's always been that way, and the only thing he cared about was that she was his partner in crime on the way to earning the cash he cared about so much at that time. It was because of all these clear conclusions that emerged from this turn of events that Catalina lost all her passion, dignity, and faith in finding her true love. She became ruthless towards men, which was also shown many times in the storyline of GTA 3. Before we go any further, let's look at one of the Liberty Tree newspaper articles. From the tabloid, we learn that the couple was involved in carrying out robberies in the southern United States in the years preceding the events of GTA 3. You can easily see an analogy here. The woman, fearing that Claude would treat her the same way as CJ, that is, use her feelings to make money, did exactly the same thing to Claude. The woman had been pretending all these years that she reciprocated the man's feelings so that she could use him to make money from robberies. She told him this right in the face at the end of the GTA 3 storyline. However, it does not change the fact that CJ has never been so harsh towards Catalina. CJ never tried to kill Catalina. So why does the woman want to impose such a drastic punishment on Claude? Why did the woman want to kill him? After all, not every guy has to be the same as CJ. And secondly, Claude was faithful to Catalina for a very long time, and Catalina gained a lot from working with this guy. There is an answer to all this too. Well, one of the articles in the Liberty Tree newspaper writes that Claude and Catalina arrived in Liberty City only in October 2001. This feels somewhat contradictory to what Catalina says in GTA San Andreas. It is said there that Catalina intends to go with Claude to Liberty City right after the Farewell, My Love mission. Of course, this does not mean that the developers made any mistakes there. The plans of the couple could have simply changed, and they ended up going somewhere else instead of Liberty City. Therefore, the robbery we witnessed at the beginning of GTA 3 was probably the first or one of the first heists of the couple on the East Coast. In addition, we also know that Catalina and Claude cooperated quite intensively with the Colombian cartel, working with Miguel, who is a high-ranking member of this organization. We also know from GTA 3 that Catalina earned a lot of money from smuggling and distribution of Spank, which was sold on the streets of Liberty by the Colombians and later on also by the Jamaicans. When we put it all together, it looks like Catalina, having already planned drug cooperation with the cartel, decided that she wouldn't have to carry out any more robberies. It will be much better to devote yourself fully to other activities, which will be a much better source of income. Ergo, Claude was no longer needed by the woman at that moment. Well, since Claude committed a lot of crimes with Catalina, spent many years with her, and certainly knew a lot about her, it was more convenient to just kill him. You know, just in case. Moreover, if Claude had remained alive, he would have been another of the shareholders of the whole Spank drug operation. There's also the fact that Catalina didn't love Claude, so she was probably annoyed by this constant cliche of being in love with him. Kisses, sex, hugs, and other things like that, done with a person you don't care about and who is only used for business, probably weren't pleasant either. Luckily, Claude survived the attempt on his life in the end. Unfortunately, despite his loyalty, he was betrayed several times by some of his employers. This led to the fact that at some point Claude simply didn't care about all interpersonal relationships anymore and began to think only about himself. Therefore, he even tricked one of the few gangs that was relatively good to him, the Yakuza. And speaking of the devil, the episode about why Claude betrayed the Yakuza is the one I recommend to you now. As for today's video, I would like to ask you to rate it and write a comment, for example, about what wasn't discussed. Take care, and see you soon.